Welcome to this episode of Page of Crime. I would first like to thank everyone for taking time to watch my content, who liked, commented, and subscribed. On this episode, we are going to get into the tragic case of Brianna Ghey. In the quiet town of Culcheth, a tragedy unfolded that would not only shock the community, but also ignite a crucial conversation about the safety and acceptance of transgender individuals. The murder of 16-year-old Brianna Ghey, a bright and cautious girl, became a strong reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by transgender youth. Brianna would be born a boy in Cheshire, England on the 7th of November 2006 by Esther Ghey and Peter Spooner, who she lived with. Brianna at the time would be named Brett Spooner. Brianna would also have an older sister, Alicia. The parents of Brianna would part ways when she was around 5 or 6 years of age. Esther would then meet with her new partner, Wesley Powell. Brianna would come out as trans at age 14, a decision her mother and sister supported, including her stepfather. Her biological father found it difficult at first, but managed to understand his daughter's feelings and come to support her decisions. They were happy with the transition if it made her happy. Brianna and Alicia grew up together and were very close. They could open up to each other without judgment. They would have movie nights where they would snuggle up together and watch movies. She would attend Birchwood Community High School in the Birchwood area of Warrington. As a teenager, Brianna was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism. She also had an eating disorder and would occasionally self-harm. These diagnoses also meant that Brianna did not participate in regular lessons and required one-on-one tutoring in her school's inclusion room. According to her friends, Brianna would often help younger transgender girls safely and legally access transgender hormone therapy. She reportedly faced years of transphobic harassment and bullying, including at school, a part of which was being repeatedly gang-beaten. The school she attended would deny knowing of any bullying going on. In addition to being a student, Brianna was a TikToker, with her number of followers variously reported between 11,000 and 63,000. On TikTok, she would mime and dance to popular songs and try on different outfits. Brianna also had plans to be a beauty therapist once she had finished with school. Whenever Brianna was not at school, she would mostly stay at home because of her anxiety. During her last year at school, a new student by the name of Scarlett Jenkinson would be transferred from a previous school, Culcheth High School, after an incident on the 17th of September 2022, which she brought cannabis-infused edibles into school, giving them to younger classmates who subsequently fell ill, some of them as young as 13 years old. The police would have to get involved, and they would record the event as a spiking. As an alternative to exclusion, Jenkinson was allowed to transfer to Birchwood, but the reason she was transferred was never told to the new school she would attend, because at the time the cannabis edibles would be in a case review. It would be here at Birchwood, where she met and formed a friendship with Brianna Ghey. They would hang out by the local shops after school for a bit before Brianna would go home. On the 11th of February 2023, Brianna received a message from Scarlett Jenkinson inviting her to meet at the local library. The message read, "Gonna get absolutely shite-faced and high as F, but can only go out in Culcheth cause. Police are on to me again for vandalism and shite in Birchwood, so I have to stay here, but don't worry, I know a good spot that I always go to do coke, etc." Trusting her friend, Brianna left her home in Birchwood at 12:45 in the afternoon, captured by a doorbell camera as she messaged her mother about her plans. Despite her fears of traveling alone, Brianna's mother encouraged her, hoping the outing would help her daughter overcome her social anxieties. After a 25-minute walk to Birchwood railway station, Brianna boarded a bus at 1:38 p.m. At 1:53, she met with Jenkinson and an unfamiliar face, Eddie Ratcliffe, at the bus stop outside the library. Eddie Ratcliffe, a pupil at Culcheth High School. He first met Jenkinson in school at age 11. He was seen as a role model at school who achieved top grades. He was known as a bit of a loner. There are pictures online of family holidays to the Lake District and North Wales in their camper van and games nights at home. He never showed signs of violence, but he did have a fascination for collecting knives and blades. Even though Jenkinson had changed school, these two remained close. Ratcliffe, along with other family members, represented England in the World Kickboxing Championships. In 2018, he competed at a kickboxing championship organised by ISKA in Jamaica as an amateur kickboxer, representing England, where he would finish with a silver medal. unknown to Brianna, the day they all met up would take a dark turn. The trio was last spotted on CCTV at 2:02 p.m., heading towards Colchester Linear Park, where multiple eyewitnesses saw them walking together. While together they would exchange messages on Snapchat, Jenkinson sent a message to Brianna at 2:15 p.m. "Girl, I'ma wait where I am until we have drugs, lol." Brianna would respond saying, "I'm too anxious." Here, under the guise of waiting for a drug dealer, Jenkinson manipulated the situation. Jenkinson, posing as a fake dealer on Snapchat, exchanged messages with herself, arranging meeting plans. At 2:30 p.m., Brianna, having grown suspicious of Jenkinson, messaged a friend. "Scarlett is so weird, girl. I think she's pretending to have a dealer." Once in the park, they would walk to an area that wasn't to open for people to see. In a horrifying turn of events, Ratcliffe, previously known for his calm demeanor and interest in martial arts, revealed a hunting knife. What followed was a brutal attack on Brianna, with both Jenkinson and Ratcliffe alternating in their assault, driven by motives still not fully understood. Their crime did not go unnoticed. Jenkinson and Ratcliffe were spotted from a distance by a couple walking their dog in the park. After realizing they had been seen, Jenkinson and Ratcliffe fled, leaving behind Brianna's grievously wounded body. They would also take Brianna's phone and later throw it into a drain. Both teenagers then went home and carried on as if nothing had happened. The couple would then head over to the area as they felt something suspicious was going on. The couple then discovered Brianna's body, face down and bleeding heavily, and called emergency services at 3:13 p.m. Officers arrived at the scene just 12 minutes later and established that Brianna had suffered multiple stab wounds to the head, neck, and chest. Emergency services attempted CPR on her body, but Brianna was sadly pronounced dead by paramedics at 4:02 p.m. People would soon realize that something serious was happening when they would hear the sounds of a helicopter landing in the park, so Brianna could be airlifted to hospital. A Home Office post-mortem was ordered to determine the cause of death. The examination found that Ghey had been stabbed 28 times, across her head, neck, chest, and back. The investigation into Brianna's death began with a massive media appeal that brought forward numerous eyewitnesses, and the two teens were quickly identified as suspects. Jenkinson would actually post an online tribute with a photo of Brianna. This led to the swift arrest of Jenkinson and Ratcliffe on the 12th of February 2023, 24 hours after the murder. Two 15-year-old suspects, Eddie Ratcliffe from Lee and Scarlett Jenkinson from Warrington, were arrested simultaneously at their homes by Cheshire Constabulary. The scene at Jenkinson's arrest was one of disbelief and tears and asking, "How come I'm a suspect? Is it because I was the last person to see her alive?" In separate body cam video, Ratcliffe is seen kneeling on the floor as officers handcuffed him. A search of their homes unearthed chilling evidence, and their mobile phones were seized by detectives for telecoms analysis. In Jenkinson's bedroom on the floor, police found a handwritten murder plan detailing every step of their grim blueprint. She writes, "Meet Eddie at Wooden Post 1 p.m, walk down to Library bus stop, wait until Brianna gets off bus. Then the three of us walk to Linear Park, go to the Pipes Tunnel area. I say code word to Eddie. He stabs her in the back as I stab her in stomach. Eddie drags the body into the area. We both cover up the area with logs, etc. The plan was explicit, with positions and actions performed to the latter. Among Jenkinson's belongings, detectives found a list of other potential victims and notes on notorious serial killers. Jenkinson's obsession with Brianna was evident from her text messages, and her fascination with serial killers added a macabre depth to her character. Meanwhile, Ratcliffe's contribution was equally horrifying. During the search of his home, a hunting knife, purchased during a Christmas break in Bulgaria, would be found in his bedroom. Forensic evidence linked Brianna's DNA to this knife and to Ratcliffe's clothes, shoes, and coat, irrefutably connecting him to the crime. There was no forensic evidence linking Jenkinson to the weapon, and no spots of blood were found on her clothing. Jenkinson displayed a fascination with serial killers, watching documentaries and keeping notes about notorious killers including Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy. She reportedly used the Tor browser to access videos of torture and murder on the dark web. Eddie Ratcliffe was described in one of Jenkinson's notebooks as intelligent but socially awkward. There was also a note they found with 4 other names of potential victims written down. The others were 4 boys they disliked. One Ratcliffe thought was a nonce, another the boy considered a love rival, and 2 who had been mean to Jenkinson's boyfriend. Brianna became their focus after they failed to lure one of the others out with a fake social media profile. She would be easier to kill, they agreed, in one of thousands of text messages exchanged in the run-up to the murder on the 11th of February 2023. The teenagers plotted her murder meticulously at the age of 15, with Jenkinson handwriting a plan for how, where, and when they would stab Brianna. They even had a code word, Ghey, to signal the start of the attack in Colchester Linear Park in Warrington, stabbing Brianna multiple times before they were disturbed by a couple walking their dogs. Detectives from the force's major investigation team spent months piecing together the case, gathering vital evidence, speaking to numerous witnesses, viewing hours of CCTV footage, and carrying out forensic inquiries. Initially, there was speculation about whether this was a hate crime, given Brianna's transgender identity. But Detective Chief Superintendent Mike Evans of Cheshire Constabulary emphasized that it was a targeted attack, not necessarily a hate crime. There is no evidence to suggest that the circumstances surrounding Brianna's death are hate-related. On the 14th of February, police reported they were investigating all lines of inquiry, including whether the attack had been a hate crime. On the 15th of February, the suspects were charged with murder, refused bail, and placed in youth detention. The next day, the suspects appeared via video link in a brief hearing at Liverpool Crown Court. At this hearing, Judge David Aubrey remanded them in youth detention accommodation until a plea and trial preparation hearing on the 2nd of May 2023. The accused were not required to enter a plea and were remanded until a further hearing on the 11th of May. In a pre-trial hearing on the 20th of July 2023, one of the suspects entered a plea of not guilty. A further pre-trial hearing took place on the 4th of October 2023, during which the other suspect pleaded not guilty. While in custody, Jenkinson was found to have traits of autism and ADHD. Ratcliffe was diagnosed after arrest as autistic and as having selective mutism, resulting in him not being able to speak to anyone except his mother. On the 8th of March 2023, an inquest into Brianna's death was opened at Warrington Coroner's Court and subsequently adjourned until after the trial. In June, the inquest into Brianna's death was put on hold, pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings. A pre-inquest hearing was scheduled for the 17th of August 2023. During their initial interviews, both defendants vehemently denied any involvement in Brianna's death, but when the messages that they thought were irrecoverable were put to them, they began to turn on each other. Both Jenkinson and Ratcliffe pleaded not guilty to Brianna's murder despite the mountain of evidence gathered against them throughout the investigation. Before Jenkinson was sentenced, Jenkinson also drew up a second kill list of staff at the secure youth accommodation where she is being held, which refers to names of people caring for her. Manchester Crown Court heard that after Ratcliffe was charged with Brianna's murder, Ratcliffe stopped talking. He was diagnosed with selective mutism, speaking only to his mother. The trial was delayed for months as his legal team struggled to take instructions from him. The trial commenced at Manchester Crown Court on the 27th of November 2023. The court became the stage for a chilling trial. Due to the nature of the case and the ages of those involved, reporting restrictions were put in place preventing the naming of both of the defendants, as well as any other children mentioned during the trial. During the trial, Jenkinson was referred to as Girl X and Ratcliffe as Boy Y. Judge Amanda Yip faced the daunting task of ensuring a fair trial amidst sensitive circumstances. She briefed 14 potential jurors about the transgender identity of the victim and the unique conditions surrounding the defendants, including Ratcliffe's selective mutism and autism, and other facts of the murder ahead of the trial. After his arrest, Ratcliffe was diagnosed with autism, and the judge accepted that his social skills were not as developed as most people of his age. But she said, "Your autism cannot provide any real excuse for the offence." Because of Ratcliffe's selective mutism, he was allowed to communicate with court by typing on computer. Both perpetrators were given the option to participate in proceedings via a video link rather than in person. The jury were also told that both Jenkinson and Ratcliffe could react or speak differently in the proceedings due to their diagnoses. The trial unfolded with the prosecution, led by Brianna Ghey, presenting a disturbing timeline, with Cheryl Mottram acting as junior. The prosecution case opened in the afternoon on the 27th of November 2023 and concluded on the 8th of December 2023. The prosecution presented text message evidence that Jenkinson had previously tried to poison Brianna using an excessive amount of ibuprofen, resulting in her becoming extremely sick with what her mother had thought was appendicitis. Her vomit laced with red blobs that her mother, Esther, initially mistook for grape skins. Jenkinson poisoned her, believing that the murder would be mistaken for a suicidal overdose due to Brianna's mental health struggles. After Brianna survived the attempt, undeterred by their failed attempt, the defendants devised a new plan, one that involved a hunting knife purchased by Ratcliffe. Prior to these attempts, text messages recorded Jenkinson as admitting to being obsessed with Brianna, calling her really different and really pretty, but did not have feelings for the teenager. Ratcliffe also stated over text messages that he wanted to see if it will scream like a boy or a girl. Jenkinson would also say to Ratcliffe she intended to take parts of Brianna's body as a token. The court heard that Brianna was stabbed 28 times, but there is no evidence that her killers took any of her body parts. While planning the killing, he repeatedly referred to her not as she, but it, and a femboy thing, and said he just wanted to see what size dick it has. Judge Amanda Yip said his messages were transphobic and dehumanizing. Giving evidence, Ratcliffe insisted he was not transphobic and blamed the murder on Jenkinson. But it was his hunting knife, bought on a ski trip to Bulgaria over the 2022 Christmas break, that was used to stab Brianna. As the trial progressed, the defendant's fascination with violence became evident. Jenkinson admitted to an obsession with dark materials and had even downloaded a special browser to watch real murders and torture on the dark web, but said it was all fantasy that she had never acted on. She also admitted to keeping detailed notes about serial killers, including Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Some of the text messages that were kept on their phones read, "From Jenkinson, a woman got stabbed in the park." Ratcliffe would reply, "Holy crap." Jenkinson would message Brianna's phone, "Girl, is everything okay? Some teenage girl got killed in Linear Park. It's on the news everywhere. And why did you ditch us for some random man from Manchester?" Like what the F? Messages that were recovered after being deleted were things like, "I love watching torture vids, real ones on the dark web." She even said in one message that she had already killed 2 people. Ratcliffe would reply, "You are 1 kill away from being a serial killer." Jenkinson replied, "F yes, LOL." They would also share pictures of Brianna. Ratcliffe would send, "So I bring my knife?" "Yes," she replied. "Is it definitely sharp enough, by the way?" Jenkinson even assured Ratcliffe that he would not be caught, criticizing the capabilities of police in the area. The courts would also be advised that Brianna was not their first target. The discussions to kill other children continued, and before Brianna became the ultimate target, another boy had been in the frame. After Ratcliffe suggested they could build a noose to make it look though the boy had killed himself, Jenkinson responded, "Nah, just stab him. Slit his throat and stab his back." Jenkinson set up a fake Instagram account in a bid to lure the boy out for the proposed killing, but when he blocked their fake Instagram account, their attention turned back to Brianna. For Detective Chief Superintendent Mike Evans, it became clear early on that the 2 school pupils believed they could cover their tracks. "These are really high-functioning, intelligent children," said the officer, who is Cheshire Police's head of crime. "I know people sat at home reading this will have this sort of image that they've built themselves, but actually they're both really clever kids and very bright, very articulate. I think probably their downfall has been their confidence or arrogance around the fact that they thought that they could take another human life, and then thought there would be no comeuppance for them, and they'd never get caught." "We never built this case around a transgender element," said Detective Chief Superintendent Mike Evans. "This was about the murder of a young, vulnerable girl. We obviously know there was that kill list, which had 5 people on it. Brianna was one of them. Brianna was the only person on that list who was transgender. This was about murderous intent for somebody." In a statement to the court, Esther said she was devastated that her lonely daughter was killed by someone we believed to be her friend, someone that we trusted, someone that I was so happy that she had, fearing that my child had been lonely. Both Jenkinson and Ratcliffe made separate defense cases, Richard Pratt led the defense case for Jenkinson, with Sarah Holt acting as junior. Richard Littler led the defense case for Ratcliffe, with Stephen Swift acting as junior. Each defendant placed the blame for the actual killing upon the other, arguing that they themselves were only accessories to the act. Ratcliffe told the court that he had learned to talk about trans people this way from his schoolmates. This language has become normalized, apparently even among children. Richard Littler, defense counsel for Ratcliffe, said that Jenkinson had told him to bring his hunting knife to the park and that she had a plan to stab Brianna. Ratcliffe further stated that he did not take Jenkinson's alleged plan seriously because she had a history of always talking about murder and nothing happens. This allegedly ended with Jenkinson stabbing Brianna to death, which he saw. He denied holding any animosity towards her regarding her trans identity. Ratcliffe's defense accused Jenkinson of manipulating him due to his autism. The names on Scarlett's kill list were not gender-specific, he told the court. They were simply people she disliked. Eddie simply agreed with her. He said Ratcliffe's motive was to assist Jenkinson because he wanted to please her. Sadism is pleasure from inflicting pain, and we submit that box is well and truly ticked for Scarlett, but not for Eddie, he said. Jenkinson's defense held that while she may have lured Ghey to the park where she was stabbed and come up with the plan in question, it was only done so as part of a fantasy. She never had any intention to harm her, and that it was Ratcliffe who carried out the stabbing to Jenkinson's shock. She described herself as not stopping the act despite her surprise, due to being afraid of Ratcliffe, describing him as a sociopath. Jenkinson's defense also pointed out how an excess amount of Brianna's blood was later found on Ratcliffe's clothing, while none was found on Jenkinson's. The trial lasted 3 weeks, concluding on the 20th of December, 2023, with both defendants being found guilty of the murder of Brianna Ghey. Jury deliberations lasted for 4 hours and 40 minutes. Judge Yip indicated that life sentences would be forthcoming. On the 21st of December, 2023, the judge ruled that anonymity orders that protected the identities of the convicted murderers would be lifted and they would be named during the sentencing hearing scheduled to take place in 2024. On the 2nd of February 2024, the sentencing hearing was held at Manchester Crown Court, before which the 2 teenagers were named. The 2 teenagers were sitting at opposite ends of the row of seats in the dock with 5 adults, support workers and prison officers. Between them, the judge determined that there was a strong public interest in the full and unrestricted reporting of what is plainly an exceptional case. The sentencing hearing included victim impact statements from Ghey's parents and stepfather. In a victim impact statement read out in court before the sentences were handed down, Brianna's mother, Esther Ghey, said Jenkinson and Ratcliffe would always pose a danger to society. I would never want them to have the opportunity to carry out their sadistic fantasies on another child. She added the hardest thing to come to terms with was finding out that one of those charged with Brianna's murder was someone she believed to be her daughter's friend. Brianna's sister, Alicia Ghey, said she now struggled to trust new people, as it was Brianna's friend who she trusted who ended her life. Prior to the trial, I've had moments where I felt sorry for the defendants, because they have ruined their own lives as well as ours. But now, knowing the true nature of the two and seeing neither display an ounce of remorse for what they have done to Brianna, I have lost any sympathy that I previously had for them, and I'm glad that they will spend many years in prison and away from society. Brianna's father said being the father of a transgender child had been a difficult thing to deal with, but he had been proud to gain another beautiful daughter. He would also go on to say, "We were forming a new relationship, and these 2 murderers have stolen that from us both." Her stepfather, Wesley Powell, told the court that while Brianna had a large online following, in reality she was lonely, vulnerable, and in need of a close friend. Both Eddie and Scarlett knew this, and preyed upon her vulnerabilities, acting as 2 predators stalking their prey. The court also heard updated assessments by psychiatrists of the perpetrators. An initial psychiatric assessment of Jenkinson suggested she had traits of autism and ADHD, but the psychiatrist changed his diagnosis post-conviction, saying she had a severe form of conduct dissocial disorder, one of the features of which is having no empathy, and that Ratcliffe has a mild form of autistic spectrum personality disorder. Judge Yip said this provided some explanation, for how Jenkinson could commit such a dreadful murder, but did not lower her culpability. The judge said she did not want to dwell on the murder itself, but it was brutal, with Brianna suffering 28 stab wounds. Taken together, the injuries point to a very sustained and violent assault, she added. Sadly, Brianna can't have lost consciousness immediately, and she must have been aware she was being attacked. On Wednesday, the 20th of December 2023, a jury found them guilty of murder following a trial spanning almost 4 weeks. Speaking after the verdict, Judge Yip said she would have to impose a life sentence for both defendants. She explained that she will now have to decide what the minimum amount of time you will be required to serve before you might be considered for release. Scarlett Jenkinson was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 22 years, and Eddie Ratcliffe was also given a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years. Jenkinson will be eligible to be considered for parole on the 25th of January 2044, while Ratcliffe will be eligible to be considered for parole on the 25th of January 2042. In handing down the sentences, Brianna's family was sitting across several benches. Her father, Peter Spooner, nodded as Jenkinson's sentence was handed down. The killer's relatives were also present. Jenkinson's mother could be seen crying as the hearing concluded. Neither reacted as the sentence was passed, with Jenkinson playing with a green fidget toy. Judge Amanda Yip said, "You both took part in a brutal and planned murder which was sadistic in nature and where a secondary motive was hostility towards Brianna because of her transgender identity. The messages reveal your fantasies and show your sadistic motives. Brianna's murder was exceptionally brutal." She said Jenkinson was motivated by a deep desire to kill, and pronounced her concern on hearing that the teenager had expressed the desire to kill again after her conviction. She had written a new kill list since her detention, which included the names of some of her carers the court heard. To both defendants, the judge said, "You picked Brianna because you both thought she would be an easy target." The judge warned the pair they may never be released if they remain a danger. Though Jenkinson pleaded not guilty to the murder, Manchester Crown Court heard that since her conviction she had admitted taking part in the stabbing, having previously blamed Ratcliffe for the murder. After the conviction, she told a psychiatrist she had stabbed Brianna repeatedly and had found it exciting, and that she killed her because she thought Brianna would stop being her friend. She murdered Brianna, so she would always be with her, the court heard. She would also state there may have been no blood on her clothing, as she had them washed. The teenagers never looked at each other and were separated by security guards. Judge Yip would say the murder was sadistic in nature, and referring to Ratcliffe, where a secondary motive was hostility towards Ghey because of her transgender identity. D.I. Nigel Parr said, "This has been a challenging and complex investigation from the very beginning, and while I am pleased that the two responsible for Brianna's brutal and senseless murder have been handed significant sentences, there is no escaping the tragedy in this case. Thankfully, Brianna's family will finally see those responsible for her murder being punished for their part in this shocking crime." Jenkinson and Ratcliffe have shown absolutely no remorse for the pain they have caused, refusing to admit responsibility for their actions, and selfishly subjected Brianna's family, and their own families, to the ordeal of a trial. I would like to express my sincere condolences to Brianna's family. They have shown an immense amount of courage and dignity throughout the investigation and the trial, and this has been an incredibly difficult experience for them. I hope that they can now in some way start to rebuild their lives after going through so much pain and grief. Speaking outside the Manchester Crown Court after the verdicts were issued, Ghey's mother Esther Ghey and father Peter Spooner gave statements to the media expressing grief and mourning the loss of their daughter. Despite remarking that the defendants seemed remorseless for the killing, Ghey's mother urged the public to show empathy for the families of the defendants. Ghey's mother Esther described her daughter as larger than life, funny, witty, and fearless. She said her house feels empty without Brianna. To know how scared my usually fearless child must have been when she was alone in that park with someone that she called her friend will haunt me forever. Peter Spooner, Brianna's father, told the press outside court that he knew his child was going to be a star, and the amount of support she received from the followers on TikTok proves this. It's difficult to comprehend how some people can do these vile things in the world, and don't understand how cruel and heartbreaking their actions can be," he said. "The impact of Brianna's death has not just affected me as a father, but also my whole family. My heart bleeds every day for Brianna, and this will never go away. And the amount of guilt I have can sometimes be unbearable. But I will ensure her memory lives on in my thoughts and dreams." After the trial, Detective Mike Evans said he thought Ghey wasn't killed because she was transgender, but that being transgender made her more vulnerable and accessible. Evans called the language used by Ratcliffe when talking about Ghey dehumanizing. Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor Ursula Doyle of CPS Mersey, Cheshire, said, after the conviction, "The planning, the violence and the age of the killers is beyond belief. Brianna Ghey was subjected to a frenzied and ferocious attack and was stabbed 28 times in broad daylight in a public park." Jenkinson and Redcliffe appear to have been a deadly influence on each other and turned their dark fantasies about murder into a reality. The extensive messages between the two, planning and plotting to kill people, talking of murder, torture and cruelty, were difficult to read. It was announced by the Judicial Office on 7th of March 2024 that Ratcliffe had applied for permission to appeal his sentence. The sentences of both Jenkinson and Ratcliffe were referred to the Attorney General Victoria Prentice under the unduly lenient sentences scheme. On the 16th of April, however, Prentice announced that the sentences would not be reviewed because the threshold to do so had not been met. In an interview on ITV1's Good Morning Britain, Esther said, "I don't know whether justice will ever be done for Brianna. It would be nice to have her back home. That would be justice for me, but obviously that isn't going to happen. Knowing that they are going to prison, and they are going to have a long time, if not forever, is a massive relief, because during the trial it was a roller coaster of emotion, as you always had that little seed of doubt that maybe the jury would come to the decision that they were not guilty. So hearing that guilty plea, it was just a massive sense of relief. The fact that they both pointed the finger at each other shows that they are cowards, really, and it shows the character of each of them. Maybe if they had admitted or shown a little remorse, I may have felt some sympathy for them. So she was so complex, because on one side she was such a confident person, but on the other side she had all these difficulties. Because of my experience with Brianna, I wanted to help other young people, so we started the Peace in Mind campaign, and we are so close to the target now. We are hoping to get a mental health coach in every school in Warrington, and we are hoping to get this spread out across England as well. I am in talks with our local MP, and hopefully we are going to get it in Parliament. Miss Ghey has launched a campaign, Peace and Mind, in memory of Brianna, which aims to support children to process and deal with negative emotions in a healthy way. In the heart of Warrington, St Elphin's Church held the funeral for Brianna on the 15th of March 2023 for a soul gone too soon. In the wake of this, a wave of compassion surged online and through communities. Friends of Ghey rallied, setting up a TikTok memorial and a GoFundMe page, sparking a remarkable outpouring of support. Within just 3 days, £70,000 were raised, a number that soared to 100,000 shortly after. This generosity translated into a touching tribute, Ghey's funeral, a refurbished room to remember her by, and cremation jewellery for her family. Some of the funds even reached a children's mental health charity, extending the impact of this kindness. A week after Ghey's death, across the UK and even in Dublin, candlelit vigils painted the evenings with sombre light. Ghey's family were overwhelmed by the messages of support, positivity, and the compassion across the country and beyond. An LGBTQ-themed radio station, Gaydio, announced it had collaborated with other LGBTQ stations in the UK to broadcast a minute's silence at 11 a.m. on the 17th of February. The silence was preceded by a feature introduced by transgender presenter Stephanie Hurst, in which she reflected on the discrimination and violence often experienced by trans people, as well as paying tribute to Ghey. This case should be a reminder of the dangers that can lurk within our communities, especially for those who are part of vulnerable groups. It underscores the importance of vigilance, not just in watching over our neighbourhoods, but also in fostering an environment where diversity is embraced and protected. As we reflect on this devastating event, we must commit to being more observant and supportive neighbours. Let us strive to create safer spaces for all members of our community, understanding that awareness and action can save lives. Let us honor Brianna's memory by standing against violence and prejudice, ensuring that her tragic death leads to meaningful change in how we care for each other in our communities. I would like to personally send my condolences to the family and friends and anyone affected by this sad and tragic loss of Brianna Ghey. My thoughts are with you all. Rest in peace. Thanks for watching, and until next time, like, comment and subscribe.